The night sky was full of stars. A small human ship moved slowly between the broken moons of an old world. Inside the ship sat one man. His name was Daniel. He was not a soldier, not a king, not a hero. He was just a traveler, moving from one planet to another, always alone. His eyes looked tired. His face showed years of silence. He wanted peace, but he never found it. His ship was weak. The fuel was low. The machines made strange sounds. He had no choice but to land on the nearest planet. From far above, the planet looked dry and poor. No lights, no cities, only small fires here and there. Daniel sighed. "Maybe I can fix the ship here," he said to himself. The ship landed near a broken village. The ground was covered with dust, and the wind carried the smell of smoke. Houses were made of stones and metal pieces. Everything looked sad. Daniel stepped out. The air was thin, but still good to breathe. He held his small weapon in one hand, just in case. As he walked into the village, he saw many faces watching him. They were not human. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes big and glowing like small moons. They looked weak, hungry, and afraid. Mothers held their children close. Old men shook their heads. Everyone stared at him, the strange human who had come from the sky. Daniel did not speak. He only looked around, searching for tools, fuel, or anything that could help. But then, he saw her at the corner of a broken wall. A woman sat on the ground. Her clothes were torn but clean. Her hair was long and silver, shining even in the dust. Beside her, two small children clung to her arms. Their faces were thin, their stomachs empty. Yet, their eyes were full of hope. The woman looked at Daniel. For a long moment, she did not blink. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Finally, she stood up slowly, her children holding on to her dress. She took a step forward, then another, until she stood in front of him. Daniel raised his weapon slightly, ready for danger. But the woman did not attack. She did not even lift her hands. Instead, she lowered her head. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. "Human." "Man," she whispered, her accent heavy but clear. "Please, take me as your wife." Daniel's eyes widened. He thought he had heard wrong. "What did you say?" The woman raised her face. Tears shone in her big eyes. "Take me as your wife, or my children will die." The whole village fell silent. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to stop. Daniel felt cold inside. He wanted to laugh, but her eyes told him this was no joke. He looked at the children. Their tiny hands held tightly to her dress. Their bodies shook, but their eyes never left him. They looked at him not with fear, but with hope. Daniel's heart beat fast. Why would a stranger, an alien widow, ask a human man to marry her? What kind of world was this, where such a request was made to a man she had just met? The woman fell to her knees. Her children copied her, kneeling in the dust. Her voice broke as she begged, "Please, I have no one, no husband, no protector. Raiders come every night. They will take me. They will take my children. Only if I have a husband, they will leave us. Please, human man, save us." Daniel stood frozen. He did not know what to say. He had traveled across galaxies, seen many strange things, but never this. A poor widow with children, begging him to be her husband. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to say, "Not my problem." But something inside him stopped him. Maybe it was the children's eyes. Maybe it was the way the woman's voice shook when she said, "My children will die." The villagers watched silently. No one helped her. No one spoke for her. It was clear she was truly alone. Daniel lowered his weapon. He looked at the woman. Again, her tears ran down her cheeks, falling into the dust. She held her children close, waiting for his answer. But Daniel said nothing. He only turned his head and looked at the dark sky. The stars seemed so far, and for the first time in many years, he felt heavy inside. The widow raised her head slowly, searching his face. Her lips trembled. She whispered again, "Please, take me, before it is too late." Daniel's silence was broken by a sound in the distance, the sound of engines. The ground shook lightly. Shadows moved across the hills. The villagers gasped. Children cried. The woman's hands shook as she pulled her children close. Daniel looked, his eyes narrowed. Strange lights were coming closer. Raiders, and in that moment, Daniel understood. Her words were not only desperate, they were true. The widow's voice came once more, sharp and full of fear. "If you do not take me now, they will take me forever." Daniel's heart raced. The choice stood before him like a storm. Would he walk away and let the raiders take her and the children? Or would he step forward into a life he never asked? For the stars above gave no answer, only silence. But in that silence, the fate of the human man and the alien widow began to change. The night was tense. Shadows of raider ships passed over the village like hungry birds. People hid inside their broken homes, praying the raiders would not come closer. But Daniel stood still. His human eyes watched the strange lights in the sky. Behind him, the alien widow held her children close. She was shaking, but her voice was steady. "Now you see," she said softly, "why I begged you." Daniel turned to her. "Why me? I'm just a traveler. You don't even know my name." The woman's silver hair shone faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes were large, full of sorrow, but also full of courage. "Because," she whispered, "a widow without a husband is prey. Raiders can take her. The law of this world is cruel. But if she has a husband, they cannot touch her. They fear the bond of family. It is the old law. Even raiders follow it." Daniel frowned. "So you asked me to be a shield?" The woman lowered her head. "Yes, a shield. A protector. A husband." Children peeked from behind her dress. Their big, glowing eyes stared at Daniel with both fear and hope. The smallest child whispered in a tiny voice, "Please, protect us." Daniel's heart beat heavy. He had walked alone for many years. He thought he had no place in the galaxy, except inside his small ship. He thought people were only burdens. But here, 3 lives begged him for help. Still, suspicion crawled inside him. He narrowed his eyes, and if this is a trick, if you bring me into your life only to betray me. The widow lifted her head. Her tears glistened. "If I wanted to trick you, I would not kneel in the dust. I would not show my weakness. I beg you because I have nothing else left." Silence. The wind moved dust across their feet. The raider lights grew smaller in the distance, but everyone knew they would return. They always returned. Daniel lowered his weapon. "Tell me," he said, "how did your husband die?" The woman's voice broke. "He was killed in the war. The raiders burned him alive when he tried to protect us. Since that day, we run. Every night, we fear. Every morning, we wake with no food. My children, they have not eaten in 2 days." Her son coughed weakly. Her daughter leaned against her side, too tired to stand. Daniel's chest felt heavy. He had seen death. He had seen pain. But this was different. The widow stepped closer. She looked into his eyes. Her voice was quiet, but every word struck like thunder. "Human man, if you do not marry me, I am nothing. I am a widow with no power. My children will be taken, I will be sold. But if you say yes, Even for one day, even for one night, we will live." Daniel looked at her hands. They were shaking, dirty, but strong. She was not lying. He felt it. He saw it in her children's eyes, but something inside him resisted. His old wounds, his old loneliness, his fear of belonging. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to climb back into his ship and forget this planet. He turned, ready to leave. But then he heard the widow's cry. Not loud, but deep and full of pain. "Please, if you walk away, you will kill us with your silence." Daniel froze. The words cut into him. He remembered long ago when he too had begged for help and no one came. He remembered his empty nights when he thought life had no meaning. Slowly, he turned back. His face was hard, but his eyes were soft. "If I say yes," he asked, "what happens then?" The widow straightened, though tears still wet her cheeks. "Then you are my husband. Raiders will not take me. Villagers will not shun me. My children will have a father, even if not by blood. You will have a home, and maybe peace." Daniel stared at her for a long time. The village was silent, waiting. The children held their breath. The stars above seemed to listen. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to be a father." The widow's lips trembled. She whispered, "You only need to be human." Her words echoed in the still night. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to answer, but before he could, a horn blew in the distance. The villagers gasped. The children screamed. The raiders had returned faster than anyone thought. The widow grabbed Daniel's arm. "Choose now," she begged. "Say yes, or watch us fall." Daniel's hand tightened around his weapon. His eyes burned with fire. The time for silence was over. But what would he choose? The sound of the raiders faded into the distance once more, leaving the village trembling in silence. Fires burned in small corners. Smoke curled up into the thin night sky, and the people hid like ghosts inside their broken homes. But Daniel remained standing, his weapon still in his hand, his mind heavier than ever. The alien widow stood before him, her children holding tightly to her dress. She did not speak now. She had already begged. She had already cried. Her strength was gone. Only her children's eyes still shone in the dark. Daniel looked at them, two small faces, pale blue skin like their mother, eyes large and glowing, filled not with anger, but with something else, something deeper, something Daniel had not seen in many years' hope. The boy was thin, his arms no stronger than sticks. His chest rose and fell too quickly, each breath a struggle. But he stood straight, refusing to show weakness. His small hands gripped his sister's fingers tightly, as if he was already her protector, though he could barely protect himself. The girl was younger, her hair tangled and her cheeks stained with tears. Yet she looked at Daniel with a strange kind of trust. No fear, no hatred, only belief. Daniel felt a sting in his chest. Why did they look at him like that? He was a stranger, a wanderer, a man who never stayed in one place. He was no hero. He had no home, no family. And yet these children, in their silence, treated him as if he were already something more. The widow broke the silence with a weak voice. "They do not ask for riches. They do not ask for power, only food, and someone who will not leave them." Her words struck Daniel harder than the raiders' weapons ever could. He knelt slowly. Lowering himself to the children's level, their glowing eyes met his. The boy did not flinch. The girl tilted her head and whispered, "Are you our father?" Now Daniel froze. His throat tightened. He had no answer. The boy pulled his sister back slightly, as if to protect her from Daniel's silence. Then he spoke, his voice small but steady. "Mother says you are strong. stronger than the raiders. If you are here, we will live. If you leave, we will die. So, stay. Daniel looked at the boy's eyes. They were not just the eyes of a child. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much pain, too much hunger, too much fear. The eyes of a child forced to grow up before his time. Daniel's own memories rose like ghosts. He remembered being young, alone, abandoned in the ruins of war. He remembered reaching out for someone, anyone, to stay. But no one had come. His fists tightened. He knew the feeling of being left behind. Many could not push it onto them. The widow's voice came again, soft but firm. They already see you as their father. They already believe you are the one. Who will stand between them and the darkness? Daniel stood up slowly. His face was hard, but inside his chest, the storm of doubt raged. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to tell them he was not meant to be a protector, not meant to carry others. But the children's eyes would not let him. He turned his head and saw villagers watching from shadows. None of them came forward. None of them offered help. So they only whispered among themselves, too afraid to challenge the raiders, too afraid to share the widow's burden. Daniel realized the truth. These children had only their mother, and now him. The widow stepped closer. If you accept, you will not just be my husband. You will be their father, their shield, their hope. Daniel's lips parted, but before he could answer, the sound of footsteps came from the darkness. The children gasped. They clung tighter to their mother. Out of the shadows walked 3 villagers, men with tired eyes and sharp bones. One of them pointed at Daniel. Human, if you truly wish to help, prove it. Raiders will come again. They always come. Stand with her when they arrive, or leave now and never return. Daniel stared at the men. His jaw tightened. This was no small choice. This was the line between being a stranger and becoming part of their fight. The widow waited. The children stared. Their glowing eyes pierced into him, searching for his answer. Finally, Daniel took a slow breath. He looked down at the girl, then at the boy. I don't know how to be a father, he said quietly, but I know how to fight. The boy's face lit up with a faint, tired smile. The girl hugged her mother, whispering, "He will stay." The widow's tears fell again, but this time they were not of despair. They were of hope. Yet the night was not over. From far across the desert came the sound of engines again. Louder this time. Closer. Daniel gripped his weapon tight. The children's eyes reflected the growing lights of the raiders' ships. The choice was made. Now, the storm was coming. The village slept in fear. Fires burned low, doors shut tight, and whispers of prayer filled the cold air. But Daniel did not sleep. He stood outside the widow's broken home, his weapon in hand. His eyes on the horizon, he could already feel the storm of danger moving closer. The ground shook softly, like the first growl of a beast before it attacks. Inside, the widow tried to calm her children. "Close your eyes," she whispered. "It will be morning soon." But her voice carried no certainty. The children curled against her, too tired to cry, too hungry to sleep. Then it came. The night tore open with a roar of vengeance. The sky filled with red lights. Raider ships hovered like vultures above the broken roofs. Their shadows spread across the village like poison. The villagers woke with screams, running in every direction. The widow pulled her children close. Her eyes met Daniel's through the cracks of the door. She whispered one word, "Please." Daniel stepped outside, his boots sinking into dust. He had no armor, no great weapons, no army. Only his small gun and his will. But as he faced the storm of raiders, something inside him changed. He was not just a traveler anymore. He was a shield. The raiders landed with a crash of steel. Their leader stepped forward, a giant creature with black armor and burning red eyes. His voice thundered through the village. "The widow? Bring her out. She belongs to us now." No villager moved. No one dared answer. Fear chained them all, but Daniel did. He stepped forward, his shadow long under the raiders' lights. His voice was steady. "She is under my protection." The raiders laughed, a cruel, sharp sound that filled the night. A human. Their leader mocked. "A stranger dares to challenge us." Daniel raised his weapon. "Try me." The air froze. Then the first raider charged. Daniel moved fast. His gun fired once, the shot echoing like thunder. The raider fell. Dust rose. The villagers gasped. For the first time, someone had struck. "Back!" The other raiders roared in anger. They rushed forward, blades flashing, voices screaming. Daniel fought with all his strength. He ducked, rolled, fired again. His weapon shook in his hands, but his aim stayed true. 2 more raiders fell, but they were many. Too many. One of them struck him across the shoulder with a heavy blade. Pain burned through him. He staggered but did not fall. He clenched his teeth and struck back, driving his weapon into the raider's chest. Inside the house, the children watched through the cracks. Their glowing eyes followed every move, every strike. Their mother held them tight, whispering, "He fights for us. He fights for us." Daniel's strength began to fade. Blood ran down his arm. His breaths grew heavy. Yet he kept fighting, not for himself, not for glory, for the widow, for the children, for the eyes that looked at him with hope. The raider leader stepped forward, towering above him. "Enough," he roared. "You are nothing but flesh. You cannot stop us all." Daniel raised his gun, his hands trembling. "Maybe not, Lee, but you will not take her." The leader swung his massive blade. Daniel barely blocked it. The force threw him to the ground. His weapon slipped from his hand. The widow screamed. The children cried out, "Father." The raider leader raised his blade high, ready to end it. Daniel's vision blurred. His body screamed in pain, but his mind remembered the children's eyes. He saw them in the dust, in the dark, shining with hope, and that hope gave him strength. With a cry, Daniel rolled to the side, grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground, and drove it into the raider's leg. The beast roared in pain, stumbling. Daniel grabbed his gun again and fired point blank into the leader's chest. The raider leader fell with a crash, shaking the ground. The other raiders froze. Their leader lay in the dust, defeated by a single human. Fear spread through them like fire. They hissed, cursed, then fled back to their ships. Engines roared, lights vanished, and the night grew silent once more. Daniel stood swaying, blood dripping from his arm. The villagers stepped out slowly, their faces stunned. They had never seen the raiders retreat. The widow rushed to him, her children at her side. She caught him before he fell. Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was strong. "See," she whispered, "you are not just a traveler. You are our protector." The children clung to him, their small arms wrapping around his waist. Their eyes looked up at him, glowing bright. "You saved us, Father," the boy whispered. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. His body ached, his wounds burned. But inside, something he thought long dead began to stir, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. The villagers bowed their heads in silence. They knew now the widow was no longer alone. The children were no longer orphans, and the raiders had found a new enemy. The night had been won, but the war was not over, and Daniel, the man who once walked alone, had stepped into a life that would never let him go. The night after the battle was heavy with silence. The villagers lit no fires for fear the raiders would see. Mothers kept their children close. Old men whispered prayers into the dust. The whole village carried the weight of fear, but also something new hope. For the first time, the raiders had been driven away. Inside the widow's small home, Daniel sat against the wall. His shoulder was wrapped in cloth, stained with his own blood. The children rested beside him, their heads leaning against his arm. They would not let go of him, not even in sleep. The widow moved quietly, washing his wounds with water she had saved. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. "You fought like no one ever has for us," she whispered. "But the danger is not gone." Daniel's voice was low, rough. "They will return, stronger." The widow looked away, her silver hair falling across her face. For a moment, she was silent. Then she whispered words that chilled the air. "They will never stop." A while. "I am alive." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Her hands froze over the cloth. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, as if preparing to open an old wound. "There is something I have not told you. Something no one in the village dares to speak." The children stirred in their sleep, clutching his shirt as if they feared losing him even in dreams. Daniel looked at them, then back at her. "Tell me the truth." Her eyes lifted to his, shining with pain. "My husband. He was not only a farmer, he was part of the rebellion." Daniel's brows furrowed. "Rebellion?" She nodded slowly. "He fought against the raiders when others bowed. He carried messages, weapons, hope. He believed this world could be free again. But one night, they caught him. They burned him alive before our eyes. They wanted to make an example of him." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "Before he died, he gave me something. A secret, a code, a piece of knowledge the raiders fear. They know I have it. That is why they hunt me. Not only because I am weak, not only because I am a widow, but because I carry the memory of his fight." Daniel sat in silence, his jaw tight. "What kind of code?" The widow shook her head. "I do not fully understand. But he said it could unlock the raiders' war engines, turn their ships against them, destroy their power." Daniel's chest tightened. Now it made sense. She was not just another widow in a forgotten village. She was a key, a target, a danger to the raiders' empire. She looked at him with tears that refused to fall. "This is why I begged you. I cannot protect it. I cannot protect my children. Alone, I will die. With you." Her voice trembled. "With you, maybe we can live long. Enough to pass it on." Daniel's eyes darkened. He had spent years wandering, avoiding every fight, staying far from causes and wars. But now, without choosing, he had stepped into one. And the cost was already written: danger, blood, and no way back. He looked at the sleeping children. Their small hands gripped him as though he was already their father. They trusted him without question. They believed in him without proof. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice firm. "You should have told me sooner." The widow lowered her head. "Would you have stayed if I did?" Daniel's silence was her answer. Outside, the wind howled across the empty land. Somewhere in the distance, engines echoed faintly. The raiders were not gone. They were only gathering, the widow whispered. They will come again, stronger, and next time they will not stop until they burn everything. Daniel pushed himself up, ignoring the pain in his arm. His shadow stretched across the wall, tall and unbroken. "Then let them come," he said. "I will fight them, but not just for you, not just for your children. If what you say is true, then this is bigger than us." The widow's eyes widened. She had expected him to leave, to turn away when he heard the truth. Instead, he stood taller. Stronger, she pressed her hand over her heart. Then you are not only my husband, now. You are the rebellion's hope. Daniel turned to the door, his eyes fixed on the dark horizon. He felt the weight of the choice he had made pressing down on him. But he also felt something else, the spark of purpose. A reason to stand. The children stirred again in their sleep. The boy whispered softly, as though dreaming, "Father, don't go." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm not going anywhere." But even as he said it, he knew the raiders would not rest. They would return with fire and fury. And when they did, the fight would not only decide the widow's fate would decide the future of the whole world. The night stretched long and heavy. The village was silent, but not peaceful. Every man, woman, and child slept with one ear open, fearing the raiders' return. Even the stars above seemed to watch in silence, as if waiting for what Daniel would decide. Inside the widow's home, a single lamp flickered. Daniel sat near the doorway, his weapon across his lap, his eyes staring into the dust. He had not slept. He could not. The widow moved quietly in the corner, covering her children with a worn blanket. They slept close together, their glowing eyes dim with dreams. Daniel's wound throbbed with pain, but that was not what kept him awake. It was the weight pressing inside his chest. The widow's words echoed again and again. "With you, maybe we can live. Without you, we die." He clenched his fists. He had walked alone for so long, never tying himself to anyone, never letting anyone depend on him. To accept her meant to bind himself to her, to her children, to her fight. And it meant death would always follow close behind. The widow sat across from him, her silver hair falling across her tired face. She studied him for a long time before speaking. "You are not like the others," she whispered. Daniel looked up, his eyes narrow. "I'm no savior." She shook her head softly. "No, you are not a savior. But you are a man who still remembers how to care. That is enough." Silence filled the room. The fire cracked. The children shifted in their sleep. Daniel wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but her words cut too close to the truth at last. The widow leaned forward, her voice trembling. "I will ask only once more, not for me, but for them." She gestured to her children. "Take me as your wife. Stand as their father. If you stay, we live. If you leave, the raiders will take us before the next moon rises." Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned his eyes away, but then the girl stirred in her sleep. Her small hand reached blindly until it found Daniel's arm. She clung to him, even in dreams. His breath caught. Slowly, he looked at the boy. Even in sleep, the child's face was set with quiet strength, as if preparing for battles no child should ever face. And in their faces, Daniel saw something he had not known in years. Family. Not blood, not by name, but something stronger. A bond forming not by choice, but by need. His heart raced. He stood suddenly, walking to the doorway. The night wind rushed in, carrying the faint sound of engines in the distance. The raiders were out there, watching, waiting. The widow rose too, following him. Her voice was steady now. "You must decide. A man cannot stand with one foot in the light and one in the shadow. Either you are ours, or you are nothing to us." Her words struck deep. Daniel's chest burned. He turned to her, his face hard, his eyes sharp. "If I say yes, then I am bound, not for a night. Not until the raiders are gone, but forever. Do you understand that?" She held his gaze, unflinching. "Yes, forever." The silence between them was thick, heavy, alive. Finally, Daniel stepped closer. His voice was low, but each word carried the weight of iron. Then hear me. From this moment on, I am your husband. From this moment on, I am their father. From this moment on, anyone who comes for you faces me first. The widow's breath shook, her eyes filling with tears. She fell to her knees, bowing her head to him. Then you have saved us. The children stirred again, waking slowly. Their eyes blinked open, glowing faintly in the lamplight. The boy sat up, rubbing his face. Mother, what happened? The widow turned to them, her voice soft but full of strength. We are no longer alone. We have a father now. The children's eyes widened, then turned to Daniel. The girl crawled into his arms, wrapping herself around him as though she had always known him. The boy stood straight, his face shining with a small smile. Then we are safe. Daniel held the girl, his heart heavy yet strangely light. For the first time in years, he felt something new, belonging, but the moment was broken by a sound that shook the ground. Engines, many engines. The widow's face turned pale. She rushed to the doorway. Across the horizon, lights flared. Raider. Ships larger than before, filling the night sky like a storm of fire. The boy's small smile vanished. The girl clung tighter to Daniel. The widow whispered, "They come again, stronger this time." Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. His eyes blazed with fire. Let them come. The children looked at him, their glowing eyes full of both fear and faith. And in that moment, Daniel knew his choice was made. He was no longer a wanderer. He was a husband, a father, a warrior. The storm was coming, and this time he would not run. The night stretched long and heavy. The village was silent, but not peaceful. Every man, woman, and child slept with one ear open, fearing the raiders' return. Even the stars above seemed to watch in silence, as if waiting for what Daniel would decide. Inside the widow's home, a single lamp flickered. Daniel sat near the doorway, his weapon across his lap, his eyes staring into the dust. He had not slept. He could not. The widow moved quietly in the corner, covering her children with a worn blanket. They slept close together, their glowing eyes dim with dreams. Daniel's wound throbbed with pain, but that was not what kept him awake. It was the weight pressing inside his chest. The widow's words echoed again and again. With you, maybe we can live. Without you, we die. He clenched his fists. He had walked alone for so long, never tying himself to anyone, never letting anyone depend on him. To accept her meant to bind himself to her children, to her fight. And it meant death would always follow close behind. The widow sat across from him, her silver hair falling across her tired face. She studied him for a long time before speaking. "You are not like the others," she whispered. Daniel looked up, his eyes narrow. "I'm no savior." She shook her head softly. "No, you are not a savior. But you are a man who still remembers how to care. That is enough." Silence filled the room. The fire cracked. The children shifted in their sleep. Daniel wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but her words cut too close to the truth. At last, the widow leaned forward, her voice trembling. "I will ask only once more, not for me, but for them." She gestured to her children. "Take me as your wife. Stand as their father. If you stay, we live. If you leave, the raiders will take us before the next moon rises." Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned his eyes away, but then the girl stirred in her sleep. Her small hand reached blindly until it found Daniel's arm. She clung to him, even in dreams. His breath caught. Slowly, he looked at the boy. Even in sleep, the child's face was set with quiet strength. as if preparing for battles no child should ever face. And in their faces, Daniel saw something he had not known in years. Family, not blood, not by name, but something stronger. A bond forming not by choice, but by need. His heart raced. He stood suddenly, walking to the doorway. The night wind rushed in, carrying the faint sound of engines in the distance. The raiders were out there, watching, waiting. The widow rose too, following him. Her voice was steady now. You must decide. A man cannot stand with one foot in. The light and one in the shadow. Either you are ours, or you are nothing to us. Her words struck deep. Daniel's chest burned. He turned to her, his face hard, his eyes sharp. If I say yes, then I am bound. Not for a night. Not until the raiders are gone, but forever. Do you understand that? She held his gaze, unflinching. Yes, forever. The silence between them was thick, heavy, alive. Finally, Daniel stepped closer. His voice was low, but each word carried the weight of iron. Then hear me. From this moment on, I am your husband. From this moment on, I am their father. From this moment on, anyone who comes for you faces me first. The widow's breath shook, her eyes filling with tears. Fell to her knees, bowing her head to him. Then you have saved us. The children stirred again, waking slowly. Their eyes blinked open, glowing faintly in the lamplight. The boy sat up, rubbing his face. Mother, what happened? The widow turned to them, her voice soft but full of strength. We are no longer alone. We have a father now. The children's eyes widened, then turned to Daniel. The girl crawled into his arms, wrapping herself around him as though she had always known him. The boy stood straight, his face shining with a small smile. Then we are safe. Daniel held the girl, his heart heavy, yet strangely light, for the first time in years. He felt something new, belonging. But the moment was broken by a sound that shook the ground. Engines, many engines. The widow's face turned pale. She rushed to the doorway. Across the horizon, lights flared. Raider ships, larger than before, filling the night sky like a storm of fire. The boy's small smile vanished. The girl clung tighter to Daniel. The widow whispered, "They come again, stronger this time." Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. His eyes blazed with fire. Let them come. The children looked at him, their glowing eyes full of both fear and faith. And in that moment, Daniel knew his choice was made. He was no longer a wanderer. He was a husband, a father, a warrior. The storm was coming, and this time he would not run.